Hello and welcome to another episode of the HCP podcast. Today we are joined by Sophie Hollis, who you may otherwise know as thehungry.medic on Instagram. Sophie is balancing her final year of medical school whilst also powerlifting, crushing some Ironman 70.3s, and also just figuring out how to adult, in her own words. Sophie is a Jack of all trades, master of none stereotype, and she shares her attempts to pull off her ultimate balancing act of medicine, managing a full fitness schedule and personal life, and showing others that whilst medicine or any vocation is a big part of your life, it doesn't have to be the whole life, and you can have your own passions and projects and other things too. So I'm really excited to talk to Sophie today, and hopefully you'll enjoy today's episode. Brief reminder, my name's Tom Summerscales. I'm the host of this podcast and also the owner of Become Athletic, an online fitness and nutrition company focused on supporting healthcare professionals with one-to-one coaching as well as other support. You can catch me at TomSumCoach on Instagram, and enjoy the episode. Amazing. And welcome to the episode, Dr. Sophie Hollis. How are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. It's nice to be called doctor. You've kind of given me a boost by a year because I've still got a year to go. So I passed finals and already made the title of doctor, which is quite nice. But
we'll say pre Dr. Sophie Hollis then, appease the critics out there. So we were just chatting before we got started to people who are listening. You've been training this morning already, as you've got a half Ironman in a month's time, pretty much.
Yeah, pretty much. I'm looking forward to it. It will be my first one in the UK, so it's my second one overall. But I did one in 2024. I went to Elsinore in Denmark, and honestly, highly recommend. It was brilliant. I loved it. Nice and flat, so really good first one to do. But it was doubly nice because I'd also never been to Denmark and Copenhagen before, so I kind of lumped it into a bit of a solo trip and met some out there for the race, and then spent some time in Copenhagen. But this will be my first one in the UK, so it'll be my first one with people coming to support me, which will be really nice. So I'm massively looking forward to it.
Very cool. Yeah, it'll be very exciting. And for those who don't know you, who are listening, it'd be great if you could just give us a brief intro of about you, your stage of training. Yeah, that'd be cool to hear. I obviously you did a very brief intro pre-episode, but I always like it to if you can intro yourself as well.
So I'm currently a final year medical student. I'm at the University of Birmingham. I've done 6 years though of training because I took an extra year out to do urgent and emergency care, which I did in London because I've got an interest in emergency med and anaesthetics. And something I've actually picked up on is quite a lot of the emergency doctor and anaesthetists are also into kind of crazy endurance sport. That I met a lot of Ironmans in that year out in emergency care. But so that's kind of my clinical side of things. I'm hoping to do my F1 a bit further south, so come down to Kent, Surrey, Sussex way for some nice cycling and just a bit of a change of scenery because of Birmingham, I'm kind of ready to move on. Sorry for the Birmingham lovers, but outside of that, I'm quite a big advocate for medicine not being a whole life, even though it's part of your life. And I definitely like to pick and choose from quite a lot of different hobbies. So I run my Instagram account, which is kind of my creative outlet when I'm not having a bit of a creative block, which, being so tired, happens quite a lot, actually. And from the sporting side of things, I used to focus more on powerlifting, which was a massive kind of mental and physical outlet, and at times an emotional outlet as well, if I'm being really honest. But I found out earlier this year that I'm hypermobile pretty much everywhere, including in my lumbar spine, which is why I kept getting a recurring back injury. And so for the time being, powerlifting's kind of parked in the back seat, and triathlon and half Ironmans is currently riding shotgun and kind of calling out the direction. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. I can talk about all three of those things in a lot of detail, but we'd be here for
Yeah, we could absolutely get into those very shortly. There's I think there's lots we can dive into, and in particular how you kind of manage all that as well. We'll definitely talk about, as that's always if there's one thing people like to get more insight on when I talk to them, and they sort of maybe chat about people they follow on social media who are healthcare professionals who are seemingly kind of managing to do Ironmans or do whatever it might be, powerlifting, whatever those goals are, alongside either studying or practicing. It's one thing people do like to just see what is the reality for other people, and is it as easy as they make it look online? I think often it's not easy either, but we'll get into it. But before we do that, we're going to do the quickfire segment, which is always fun. We'll see if you can set the record of how quickly you can do the quickfire segment. So far, I think the quickest has been like 15 minutes. So,
oh wow!
so it's not been that quick fire, but it's mainly because there's been lots of good answers and lots of discussion about favorite protein bars and desserts. So, first question is, what's your must-have work snack?
So right now, there's rather dangerously an M&S in the hospital that I'm working in, and I don't know if you've ever had their gigantic chocolate buttons. But it's pretty horrific the number of times I've got through a bag or half a bag. I try and set half to bring home for my partner, but rather shamefully, it's currently chocolate buttons. But they do the trick. That's what I'm going to say. They absolutely do the trick.
Fair enough. Yeah, having an M&S on site is it's very dangerous. Are you when you typically go for your work snack? Is it kind of on nights or just any time, or is it a particular time you really want it?
It's normally afternoon. It's normally afternoon when I realised I haven't brought enough for lunch, and then have a panic and end up in M&S, and I kind of give in at that point.
Fair enough. Afternoons are a really common slot for the shop trip. Okay, and favorite coffee or coffee order if you drink coffee?
Yeah, really easy. It's always a mocha with whatever kind of dairy alternative they have. I'm a massive child, and I must have chocolate in my coffee.
Okay, yeah, love it. Yes, I see you're the first mocha I think I've had on the podcast so far.
That white so far, has it?
Primarily a couple of matches as well in there, following the trends. But you won't see me ordering a matcha coffee anyway.
Yeah,
just tastes like that.
Is that
I've been told
quality and sugar wise?
Yeah,
I'm not.
Yeah, I've been told it can be tasty, but then I was like, well, how do you make it tasty? Like, you just put in loads of flavour. And I was like, okay, but what's the point of having the matcha in it anyway? Because I mean, I think the evidence for that matcha is pretty limited at best. We're not going to get sponsored by matcha, a matcha company, that's for sure. But seeing as all I've said so far is it tastes like dirt. But yes, I am also a child. I too will have, I only drink iced coffee. I don't like hot coffee. It's too bitter for me. So only iced coffee, and ideally with sugar-free caramel or vanilla syrup, because I'm also a child. Similarly, I don't like beer or wine. I only like cider, again, probably because it's sweet. We're the same vibe. In terms of your fitness, do you track or goal your steps each day, or is it not something you look at too much?
Out of habit, it's something that, it comes up on my watch. I pay attention to it, especially on a rest day. I try and hit that arbitrary, 10K that someone once plucked out of nowhere and said, yeah, it's probably a good amount to do. But now that I'm doing so much cardio, whether that's swimming, cycling, running, I pay a bit less attention, because I don't know, I'm trying to recover from doing all that. I can't also then be expecting myself to smack out two walks or however many it takes to reach that level. But also, people talking about conversion rates. I think someone says that swimming 1K is like running 4 or 5. So I guess it kind of depends at where you're looking to get your steps from, because technically if I've swum a couple of K, I've run 10K, and I've done my steps. At the end of the day, I think if you're moving, it's fine. Sometimes I will just go out because I feel like, God, I need to absolutely move, and I'll do it at walk. But it matters a lot less to me now. I think that's a really good take. Steps is great, particularly if you are either not doing much physical activity outside of it, or if you are on a rest day just to get moving, as it could be. I think when you're so used to moving all the time, to not be moving on a day can almost be difficult to deal with it itself, and just going out for a couple of steps can be a good option. I think there was something I recently posted about kind of a systematic review and a meta-analysis that came out recently that sort of said about 7,000 is sort of
you get nearly all the benefits at about 7,000. Obviously, anything over that is still fantastic if you can get it in. But hitting 7,000 is a good marker for kind of most people, which can still be pretty tough if you're in a really sedentary job. I know a lot of GPs, for example, can struggle to get kind of above 5,000 if they're not really actively pushing it, just because it can often be so tied to a desk throughout a long day. So I think that's a good take though, particularly swimming. Got a lot of steps through swimming. Okay. What's your go-to workout song or playlist or genre?
So at the moment, because I'm getting nearer and nearer the 70.3, I'm kind of treating it how I did with powerlifting. And I listen to my 70.3 playlist, which has a lot of things. It's got like Galvanize on it, a lot of absolute trash. It's terrible, but it's like the same repetitive thing just so I can focus. Galvanize, it's got a lot of Daft Punk on there, a bit of around the world, that stuff. Just absolutely mind numbing, because a lot of my bike workouts, for example, are just getting a bit painful now, and I need to just focus on that. I did the same for powerlifting. I'd get 4 weeks out and I listened to the exact music I was going to listen to when I was on the platform. But obviously on race day, I can't listen to anything, but I know I'll still have it going around my head.
Yes.
Do you have a particular song when I'm having an absolute struggle and I'm dying? I put on Hung Up by Madonna. Something about it just gets me going. I don't know if it's like that ABBA riff in the background that just gets me going, but that has saved me quite a lot of times, actually.
Yeah, it's important. It's good to know what certain things can kind of pull you out of a hole when you're in them, when it comes to music or even other little like routines sometimes, or things to think of. It can definitely be useful. Like visualization as well can be a great tool to help. But yeah, solid song choices for sure. Is there anything that you've bought in the past year that's been like game changing for you? It could be anything.
Speaking from like a student budget, there's not a lot I try to buy, but I think probably the first thing that comes to mind is probably my Weymouth race entry, because I decided to do that right when my back kind of gave out properly, and I just thought I need something to direct all my energy to, because I've been training, I'm sure we'll talk about it later, but I've been training something for quite some time, and if I don't have that schedule, that routine, my brain just doesn't do very well. So probably that. I'd say probably that.
Yeah, I like it. Yeah, it's a great one. I think so, as you say, for some people, actually having when you've sort of been training a mix of things for quite a while, sometimes it can be actually, you can almost feel a bit directionless, and it's good to then have a focus, like, right, okay, for the next 6 months, I am pushing towards this, and then afterwards I'll reevaluate and see where I want to go next. But I love it. I think also it's good in that something like a race can really force or it requires you to force structure into your week. Like you have to make the training happen. Otherwise you can have a pretty horrible day on the day.
Yeah,
so
absolutely. And it means that if I've done a long day on placement, or if we've had a full lecture day or something like that, it means that I'm not tempted to go home and flop, which a lot of the time I am tempted to, but I know I've got something else to do. And it goes back to that medicine being part of your life and not your whole life. I think actually having that training schedule, knowing it needs to happen, helps to bridge that gap, because if all I'd done was go to placement for 8 hours, which in itself is difficult, and it's not necessarily a bad thing if on that day that's what you can manage, but knowing that I've got training hanging over me as well, it definitely stops me from only having done med that day. It gives me something else to do, a different way to stimulate my brain, and in some cases completely switch it off. There's nothing switching my brain off more than looking at the same pool tiles for an hour and just going back and forth. So I think it's definitely helped with that.
I love it. Okay, change topic. What is your favorite dessert?
It's very specific. My mum makes a absolutely cracking peanut butter chocolate cake.
Oh, I've never had peanut butter.
It's so good. The frosting is like a drug. There's always a bowl of additional frosting in the fridge, and it goes horrendously fast, and people just spoon it out. It's very, very good. That's been my birthday cake request for a very long time now.
Yeah, can't be the classics.
Yeah.
So is that is it like a chocolate sponge and then peanut butter frosting, or is
Yeah.
there peanut butter like throughout the cake as well?
No, I think it's just a chocolate sponge. And I think it's made with coconut oil or something, but it means it's super moist. Like, it's really moist cake. And then the peanut butter frosting is, again, so sweet, so sweet, so good. And I was away from home for my birthday this year, and my girlfriend, fantastic, and made it for me. So I have to go a year without it. It's honestly, it's excellent. I will send you the recipe after this.
Yeah, please do. I'll add it to the show notes for afterwards as well.
Yeah, definitely. It's very good. I'd highly recommend.
Yeah, brilliant. Everyone knows this at this point, but my favorite dessert is tiramisu. The Rick Stein's recipe, I'll also put in the show notes because that's what I recommend. But yeah, my wife unfortunately is allergic to peanuts, so it kind of rules this out because if I make it, it's basically only me and technically my 1-year-old who can eat it. So I guess I can make a mini version. But we'll see. But it means I'd also have to make a second cake because then my wife will be like, "We can't make a cake that I can't eat and not make like a separate one that I can eat." So I'm in for 2 cakes if I make this. So it's a big commitment.
Sounds terrible. Sounds terrible.
Lastly, of the quickfire segment, what is your biggest frustration with maybe the fitness or kind of health space at the moment, if you have one?
I think the first thing that comes to my mind is kind of in the context of social media, and how you see a lot of people who post about doing all of these different races. So first, I think people are racing so much, and arguably too much. I'm definitely not an expert. I want to put that like really out there. I'm not an expert. I'm just a massive nerd, and that means that I read a lot and I listen to a lot, and a lot of the advice that I hear given to age groupers, which is what the majority of people posting on social media are, is don't race too much or you're going to injure yourself and be out for X amount of time, or you're not going to reach your potential. But I think you get a lot of influencers who get invited to events, which is awesome, and they race them and they run them in the trainers that they were gifted, and in the really lovely sports kit that they were gifted. And I think that through that, whilst it's wonderful, and of course people should take these opportunities because it can lead to career opportunities, and that's great. I think that sometimes it puts out a message to people who are just watching that, yeah, by the way, if you are going to start running, you need to be racing pretty much every other month. You must have some carbon trainers, and you need multiple different trainers for different runs. And also you need to look absolutely fantastic doing it. Yeah. And that definitely frustrates me. And totally. I wear the same kit on repeat, even in the gym. Like if you look through any of my posts, you'll see I'm wearing pretty much the same sports kit all the time. I have one pair of shoes. I've had the same lifting shoes for about 5 years now. My physio took one look at them and gave me this look. I was like, this is horrific. But they still work, and they're fine. And like a lot of young people, because I think majority of people who will be consuming that content will be a bit younger. We're doing this on a budget, and like we can't afford all that. And that's my biggest frustration. I think it makes it look a little bit elitist and a little bit inaccessible, when actually running is probably one of the most accessible things out there.
Yeah, I agree with everything you've just said pretty much. And it's actually a very similar frustration that someone else I spoke to recently also kind of, we had a chat about that. And it's just that sort of social media, lots of pros and cons, and particularly in the fitness space right now, it's just, as you say, it seems like also your favorite influencers or influencers are often wearing top of the range kit for often even very short distance races that if you're looking from maybe a performance perspective for those kind of people doing it, actually wearing carbon trainers for your 5K for lots of people probably isn't going to have much benefit over actually if you just were training more. It probably, or if you improved your training, you'd probably get more of it than spending 250 quid on some like carbon soles, which also might not be that comfy for you, and might not have a very long shelf life versus just a more classic pair of trainers that is a lot cheaper, but also meant you could maybe spend a bit of money on something else instead. And I think, that sort of, that kind of creates barriers in people's minds that, as you say, they have to look perfect, and it becomes much more than just being able to rock up to your local 5K or rock up to your 10K or something and do that in kit you've had for a few years. Like, the kit I train in is usually bought off Vinted. And I still, the shorts I'm wearing now that I'm going to be training in later on today, I think are like 8 years old. They get a lot of heavy use. It's just a case of, I just don't really care too much. But it's, if you're listening, you really don't need to buy the latest kit. You can buy really cheap kit from Decathlon, for example, and it'll be really good, do everything you need it to do, or Vinted. And that could last you an entire career of fitness if you wanted it to.
T-shirts. So if you do a race, particularly if you do one of the main ones, like I think Hackney Half, at least when I did it, was sponsored by Hoka. So I got a free Hoka running shirt with, not really free, it's part of the entry, but I got that as part of it, and that's a good quality shirt. So if you do race, there's no shame in wearing your race kit. I wear my 70.3 shirt. I wore it this morning. I wear it all the time, and because it's
proud of it.
Yeah, there's no shame in it.
Yeah. Sometimes people are a bit funny about wearing race shirts, but it's like, well, what's the point in being given the t-shirt if you're just never going to wear it? I get if you're going to frame it on the wall or something, sure, but also like you don't feel almost like embarrassed to wear it. Like when I did my Ironman back in like 2016, had a t-shirt that obviously the sort of finished t-shirt, and like all the other kit you sort of get off the back of it as well, like the bag and stuff. And particularly initially, I almost felt like embarrassed to be using the bag. And I was like, well, I'm not going to frame this. And if I don't use it, it's just going to sit in the cupboard. Like I earned this. So definitely be able to just wear it. And if someone thinks I'm like showing off, then that's their opinion. But I was just chucking my gym kit in it and using it to cycle across Edinburgh. And that's it. Not trying to necessarily flex per se. It's just I own it. I should use it. But yeah, so it's a really interesting one. The whole kind of barriers of people feeling like they need to have the latest kit and the latest stuff. There's the 5K, not 5K. There was a TikTok video recently that I saw around someone interviewing attendees of a 5K run in London, I think. And it's saying, like, what's your biggest ick at a 5K run? And lots of comments about what people were wearing or taking with them. You're like, oh, have we really got to this point that this is the discussion that people are now having of like, oh, these are the things people should or shouldn't wear when they come to like a 5K run? It's just like, really just rock up in whatever you want, And if you want to rock up in an outfit that's $1,000, all the power to you, go for it. There's nothing inherently wrong with that. If that's what makes you feel good and makes you feel happy, absolutely go for it. But also it's totally fine if you want to rock up in really cheap kit that just does the job for you, and that's fine as well. It's it's a big one. All right, so good frustration, and a really common topic. And I think we're going to see pretty more and more of that kind of discussion expand over the next few years. I think it's just the health and fitness space is just getting bigger and bigger with social media. I feel like even more so. It's an interesting one. So let's do a bit of a deep dive. So I suppose for you, when did fitness and sport or kind of looking after your health first become important to you? Is it something you've always been into, or is it something that you got into at university?
I think it does go quite far back, actually. So I played a lot of hockey at school. I loved hockey. I've played hockey since I was 6. And then I went off to school. I had a great first, my under 12s first team at school. I was very, very proud. And
nice.
Unfortunately, I actually, because I went from doing not very much in comparison, not very much sport. I was very sporty when I was young. I was sailing, I was playing tennis, I was playing hockey. I went from that, and then I went to boarding school where we had games twice a week, and then I was playing hockey, and then I was doing after school clubs, and it was actually quite a lot of sport. It actually highlighted I had some problems with my knees, which came from my gait. And I ended up with prepatellar bursitis in both knees. So basically, anyone listening, I'm sure it's a lot of healthcare professionals, but anyone doesn't know what that is. Essentially, you have these sacs of fluid in your knees that stop your bones from rubbing together. And mine became very inflamed. And every time I walked, there'd be this kind of grinding of my bones against this very inflamed, painful sac of fluid. And so that actually took me out of sport completely. I wasn't allowed to do anything. Walking was painful. Had a lot of physiotherapy, and long story short, I came back to hockey for about 18 months later, and and I wasn't as good. I was a year behind all the other girls who'd also been growing while they were playing sport, and I was a bit behind, and it upset me a bit, but didn't really bother me that much. But a kind of a side part of that is I'd always been a bigger child, I'd always been a bit taller, I'd been a bit broader, I carried a bit more weight, which was fine. But not doing any sport and being at boarding school, there's a really great tuck shop, meant that actually I did gain quite a bit of weight as a 12, 13-year-old beyond what's healthy. There's nothing wrong with 12, 13 I was carrying a bit more, but it was beyond what it was just becoming a problem, actually. And it kind of coinciding with that was when I started to get more upset about the fact I was behind with hockey and I wanted to be fitter. And so one summer when I was about 14, my older sister's boyfriend at the time was a PT, and he essentially just showed me around a gym, taught me how to lift some weight, told me my family all do sports. They showed me a good 5K route, and I just did a bit more exercise. So when Joe Wicks was getting really popular, so I learned to cook that same summer, did some Joe Wicks stuff, got a lot healthier, and consequently when I went back to school in September, I was much fitter, and I got back on kind of the A team for my year group, and that's kind of when it started. And I thought, oh, this is great, and I was still quite interested in the gym. But then it all kind of went a bit wrong a couple of years later, where it went from being an enjoyment to an obsession. And this is also when I started paying more attention to social media.
Right.
And it kind of went too far, kind of rebounded back the other way and got far too into this, what I thought was healthy eating. And what I just thought was, this is just living well, doing exercise. And I became very, very underweight. And at the time I didn't think it. And it's odd to look back now and see photos and be like, oh God, actually you were really underweight and people were trying to help me, but I didn't think there was an issue. And I kind of had that rebound is kind of the best way to say. But I was still very fit and functioning and playing hockey somehow. No idea how I was managing that.
Yeah, just hanging.
Then COVID hit, and there's a powerlifter called Megan Gallagher. She goes by Meg Squats on Instagram, and she's great. She's awesome. And I saw her on Instagram, and she was powerlifting, and I just thought she looked so strong. I thought that was really cool. So I started lifting weights properly in COVID. And I realized, well, if I want to be like her, I need to eat more. And as it's put very simply, I started eating more and lifting weights. And the more I ate, and the stronger I got, and the more I saw it was all right. And I started doing less running, less cardio, because I wasn't doing it because I wanted to. I was doing it to maintain what I thought was a healthy physique, or what I thought was the right physique to have. But the kind of further I went with powerlifting, and I bought her program and I followed it and I fueled myself, I started to get a bit better, which was like magical. I couldn't believe this was happening. Went to uni, was still powerlifting, and I think there was still actually some underlying kind of disordered eating thoughts. And again, like the elastic band went, and I went from having a problem of not eating enough to actually struggling with binge eating for quite a long time.
Right.
And it's only actually been over the last 2 years that's sorted now, which took quite a lot of therapy and help. But ironically, something that helped me fix it, as it were, was doing my first 70.3. It was when I was living in London for my intercalated year. I was still powerlifting, but I was miserable because I was having these issues with my mental health. And I just thought I need to do something a bit silly. And I just started therapy. And my friend Holly came to stay, and she said, I'm doing this 70.3, do you want to do it with me? And I was kind of in this mindset of everything was like so low, and I was at rock bottom. Like, what did I have to lose? So I just said yes, I did it. And I actually think it was quite a pivotal moment, because I went really focused on powerlifting and that same kind of training to all of a sudden being a complete beginner.
Yes.
Had to completely shift my focus. There's nothing aesthetic about try. And
completely forces you to change, doesn't it?
So different. And also I'm eating sweet, which is the other kind of big difference. And I just think that massive shift in my day to day kind of helped that massive shift in mindset. Everything was different. I think that I had to change everything basically, because if I wasn't eating enough and on a regular basis, I wasn't going to get through these sessions. But part of the issue which was causing my binging was I wasn't eating enough on a daily basis before that. So I'd end up with these massive binges. So I was still restricted. But I think because it had been so many years, restricting was almost kind of just a part of how I ate. And it really forced me out of that. And my therapist, who was a specialist in eating disorders, her ex-husband was a triathlete. Right. So we were talking about triathlon and how I needed to eat and all this stuff in these sessions. And I just think they all kind of mushed together. And when I popped out the end, everything was a lot better. Definitely. If you'd asked me not long ago, what was the best thing I bought in the past year that had made, a difference or been game changing, I would have said it had been the therapy, and I should have done it so much earlier.
Yeah, I think it's there's so many things to take from that. I think probably people who are listening to will find that so insightful, like the lots of things you touched on. So I mean, one is the goal, like having that big goal that just really can radically force you to have to change how you approach your schedule, your timing, your food, all of it. It enforces a structure because you have to fuel. Like if you're not fueling, you won't survive it. You won't get you have to train for the event because you'll have no energy, and also study and work and everything else too. It's that sort of using restraint rather than restriction, and shifting kind of some of those habits. I think also just I think what people I find often in healthcare can really struggle to do for themselves is seek help, whether it's from a specialist in kind of eating disorders, or for anything. I mean, for coaching, but also for really any issue. I find often, I think, because healthcare professionals can often feel like they should know how to do something, or they should be able to do it themselves. It's like, actually, it's okay to ask for help. So I think, it's really great that you did that, and that you've, the sort of journey you've been on, and now where you're at with another half in a month's time, or having already done one, is it's so cool. I suppose, one thing people like to hear is, I guess, how do you find the time? Like, how do you balance training for all this whilst also studying and being on placement and everything else?
Yeah, I think the short answer is a lot of the time I don't. And that's also the honest answer. It is really difficult, and you have to want to do it. And there's times that I've even said to my partner, like, I don't want to do it anymore, but I also know that kind of deep in, like, I actually do, and I would be more upset if I stopped. I try and plan ahead as much as I can. There's definitely easier weeks and more difficult weeks. So, for example, I've been away a couple of weekends recently, and that's meant that my really long, my long bike and my long run have had to be squashed back with the rest of the training into 5 days. And that's really hard. That's super hard, because that means early morning to get session 1 done, long day at placement, then I'm back and I do some work for exams and all that nonsense. And then I have session 2, and then I'm going to bed late, and then I'm getting up the next day to do the next early session because everything's been smushed together. One of the main things is I really like to visualize it all and see it all laid out. So even last night, I was having a bit of a panic about how to fit everything in this week. And it was actually my girlfriend, who's just understood my brain very quickly, has been, she said to me, well, why don't we write it down on your iPad and just see how this all fits in and figure it out. And I felt so much better. And I think, especially when you're training for something like a 70.3 or something that's just going to require hours and hours, and you already work hours and hours, is if you can write it down and block it out and see where it fits. Because also you can move things around and, kind of fit it together like a bit of a puzzle and see what's going to work best. And that definitely makes a big difference to me. And normally at the start of every week, I'll put it into a calendar anyway. So that's definitely been a massive help. The other thing is, I've got, as I mentioned, a very understanding partner, and my friends expect that I'm going to be training in the morning or the afternoon, or we might need to meet half an hour later just so I can shower and actually be presentable when I see them. And that doesn't necessarily come from just crowbarring what I need into their day. That comes from very understanding friends and being really honest. Just saying, oh, by the way, I'm training from this thing and I'd love to do this before coming at this time, or just dropping it in and saying, they say, can we work at 10? I go, oh, that's great actually, because I've got this training in the morning, and I'm quite lucky in that a lot of my friends are also a little bit nuts, so they're normally training for something as well. I tend to kind of group together and attract each other, but that's definitely helped. Those are probably the two main things I'd say. There's all the things that everybody does, which is, I try and eat around these times and I try and go to bed early. But for me, I think the big things are just visualizing it and having a good kind of system.
Yeah, good support network and actual real planning, I think, is the thing you touched on there. Like, I think something I'm trying to hit home to people is some people can plan in their head and they can use that as a rigid structure for their week. But I'd say most people would really benefit from just making a very basic plan for their week and actually writing it down or putting it in whether it's blocking out sections in your Google Calendar or just in an old-fashioned pen and paper diary, whatever it might be.
And there's also, as I was saying, it just doesn't happen some weeks. Genuinely, the balance doesn't happen, and I'm not going to do any races, and I'm going to be pulling back my training maybe 2-3 hours out of the week when it gets around to my exams, because actually then the balance isn't 50-50 anymore. The balance needs to be much more weighted towards my degree and my exams and my finals, because that's much more important, isn't it? Whereas, in the last 4 weeks leading up to this race, I'm still far out from my exams. I'm very on top of everything with med. The balance can drift the other way a bit. I don't think when we're talking about balance, it necessarily needs to be that kind of straight, leveled scales. Sometimes balance looks a bit more like that, and then a few weeks later it'll look a bit more like that. And sometimes you choose that, and sometimes you're forced to do that. And that's definitely something I'm trying to be a bit more comfortable with, is when the balance tips the wrong way, and I want it to be like this, but actually, I need to be doing. I need to be doing more resting is normally the main one that bothers me, or I need to be doing more academic things. But it's definitely a work in progress.
Yeah, it's always a work in progress, but I think it's really important to, I think particularly in healthcare, and when you've got a continual pipeline of exams for often a good chunk of your career, even after graduating and then getting into FY years and then specialist training and all that side of things, it's knowing when to push and pull the different balances of, okay, this now needs to be unfortunately maybe more of a exam and work block and more 80-20, and my fitness and nutrition for now just needs to be on kind of maintenance mode, and I'm not going to be pushing it. I'm just going to keep doing it each week as more of an anchor in my week and to help me kind of physically and mentally, and keep me performing at my best when it comes to working and studying. If you're eating terribly, then that's also not going to help you study or work very well. So it's like actually nutrition can help you a lot just day to day too. But I think, be able to kind of see that that's what it is and acknowledge, the next 2 months is not going to be my favorite, but it just is what it is. And once we get through that, then other stuff that's great lies on the other side. Is good to do with your rest days. It can be good to think about like a rest day scorecard, or like where you basically you kind of give different things points almost, and you can say, I need to try and get to 50 points on my rest day, and you get 10 points for, I don't know, doing some stretching, 10 points for planning your week or whatever it might be. It can be a way to give you something to aim for still on your days off, that give you some structure and make you feel like you're still achieving something, but still resting and not pushing yourself too much.
I like the idea of that scorecard. I'm the youngest of 8 children, so I'm naturally quite competitive, and anything that involves like collecting points or stuff like that, I'm like, all for that, I'm all for it. Or I've even joked recently with my partner that I do really well with a sticker chart for just kind of the boring house jobs and stuff, because that's one of the things that I don't think people mention, is when you're doing something like medicine or you're studying long hours and then you're trying to train long hours as well, the house stuff doesn't get done because there's no time for it to be done. And I think that's something that goes really unseen on social media. And I've thought recently, like, how do I try and get that message across on social media without completely exposing myself? in the way that actually I don't want to. Particularly because I live alone at the moment. So if I don't do it, it's not getting done.
Yeah.
But yeah, anything where it's collecting points or stuff, I'm all for it.
Yeah. I think it's figuring out whatever system helps you kind of function and be your best when it's either in the rough weeks or when it's on the good weeks and you've got more time. But still, yeah, the kind of the small, mundane, often boring tasks in life that we still have to get done, and saying like, how can we make them maybe as efficient as as possible, and giving us time for the fun stuff is it's always tricky. But yeah, especially when you're living alone, always tough. So I suppose for you, with you've got obviously training, you've got work, and I'm assuming all going well, you'll soon have F1 and beyond to then start to tackle. Is there anything you're thinking you'll do to kind of help you keep the anchor of fitness and nutrition in particular as you start F1 and kind of go into that? Are you planning on just doing what you're doing now and thinking that'll fit pretty well? Or is there anything else you're thinking you'll do?
I think in a sense, I'm somewhat lucky is that I'll go into it with already kind of like a baseline discipline and just habit. In the sense of, but if I haven't trained that day, I don't feel right, which in itself is quite a good motivation for me to do something, even if that day is just a walk, or I jump on the turbo for an hour and I'm just turning the pedal, not really doing anything. I think having that kind of baseline always requirement that my body needs to feel like it's done something really, really helps in itself. And I like knowing what I'm doing that week. And I think that my brain needing that also helps. It makes me sit down and plan it and see what works and what doesn't work. Something that I actually didn't start doing until recently is meal prepping. And being really honest, the reason why I never used to meal prep is because when I was really struggling with my binge eating, if I'd made these meals, they weren't going to be there when I needed them on Wednesday. It was Sunday night. Do you know what I mean? Which is, it's quite sad to think about now, but it was just something that I couldn't do. It wasn't an option for me. And unfortunately, that's the advice people always give you when, you're trying to save time or stuff. And I was like, well, that's not going to work for me, isn't it? Because that's right. It's not going to save me time. It's not going to save me kind of emotional turmoil when I've eaten a kilogram of pasta. But I've recently started doing that, and frustratingly, everyone is right. It's really helpful, and it saves me a lot of time. Just for a couple of hours on a Sunday, I make 8 meals. I'm good then. I'm sorted and I'm done. I hadn't thought about doing anything new. I think that's partly because, like I said, I've got this good leg up. Also, I'm going to try and pick up my current routine and plonk it on F1 and see if it works. And then if it doesn't work, I'll kind of go from there and adjust. I'd rather see if what I'm doing now works and before forcing more change on myself when actually there's going to be so much change going on. Like a new part of the country, new hospital, being given a lot of responsibility that I probably definitely feel ready for. But
but I think it's the classic, if it's not broken, don't fix it kind of thing. Apply what you have already. You've already got a really solid base and really great knowledge. It's like, apply that, see what works, see what doesn't work, iterate and go from there. And I think, as we kind of alluded to earlier, some weeks it's going to suck and it's just going to be, just some basic moving on the turbo trainer at home or getting out for a walk might be the best we can do. And that's fine. And other weeks will be much freer when you can train more and make the most of it. I think it's just accepting that's the case and using that as a lever of consistency rather than seeing that as a lever of, this week was rough, and so I'm just going to chuck in the towel for the next month or that sort of thing, which can often be the case for a lot of people. That kind of all or nothingness can be a great help, or it can be a great burden when it comes to consistency with fitness and nutrition, which I know we touched on a bit earlier on, for sure. Okay, I suppose for someone who's listening to this and is struggling to kind of be consistent with fitness or nutrition, or trying to kind of get into it but make it a consistent habit, is there a particular tip you have or a particular thing you really recommend they start with?
I think with the nutrition one, there's something that my coach told me. So he used to manage my kind of it was just calories and macros he used to manage. And when I was having some issues with my eating, I moved towards a nutritionist. But when I was still getting that advice from him, if I was finding it difficult to, get a 7 out of 7 in terms of hitting my targets for my calories and my macros, he used to say to me, like, okay, well, what's super, super achievable? What are we consistently achieving? Are we consistently achieving a 3 out of 7? Because if that's the case, let's aim for a 4 out of 7 next week. And that's still a really great, that's an improvement, isn't it? And that's all really improve. Then the next week, if we manage that 4 out of 7, he might say, okay, let's try for 5. If we don't get it, we'll aim for 5 until we start getting it. And if there was a moment where I dropped down, then I started going back to kind of 3s. I don't think it was ever quite that low, but kind of just for example, if it was down to 3s, we'd go back, okay, we're aiming for 4. And that was really helpful, just kind of, rather than it only accepting that perfect 7 out of 7, which is where, my perfectionism really doesn't help. He was trying to get me to be much better at just accepting improvement, and that being the main metric that we're looking at. We're not looking at kind of how often are you absolutely nailing it. It's how often you're doing good enough. And similarly, on that kind of line of good enough, it's similar. There's another podcast I really like called Key Nutrition podcast, but I think they've changed the name now, so I can't remember what it is. So I'm sorry if I'm sending people down a rabbit hole, but something that they talked about a lot, and I listened to them loads during COVID, was focus on being good enough. Because if you're consistently good enough, you'll do much better than if you're occasionally perfect. And that I really try to remember that. And sometimes I completely forget it, and I get upset when something's not being absolutely nailed. But then eventually I'll remember, and I'll have that kind of, slap in the face from what happened. I'll be like, oh, okay, actually, no, like I need to just focus on getting by with enough, and knowing that if I'm just consistent in showing up and trying to be a little bit better, I'll get much further than trying to be perfect, throwing the towel in.
There's so many ways you can talk about that kind of compound interest, or but I really love that phrase of let's aim to be consistently good, not occasionally perfect. It's one I kind of frequently use in content, as I think it's just, particularly for healthcare professionals, a lot of you out there listening are often guilty of being perfectionists, which, as we mentioned earlier, is fantastic for getting you through, getting you the qualifications you need to get into university to study medicine, and getting you through med school, and getting through F1 and everything else that requires you to get to where you want to go in your medical career. But when it comes to your own health and fitness, it can be to your detriment because of that all or nothing push, and just trying to think, okay, I can be perfect with some things, but actually with this, range targets of, let's just aim for a 3 or 4, and that's still progress, versus before, just aim to be consistent will get you so much further in the long run, reduce the level of frustration that you have as well with progress, because you are chipping away over time. I think that's so important to keep in mind. I'll often speak to people who say, oh, I had a night shift. I was a failure this week. I was like, okay, like talk me through why you were a failure. And it'd be like, oh, well, I had a night shift and I went home by the bakery and I got like some nice treats from the bakery. And I was like, okay, but how was your food over the past like 4 or 5 days? And they're like, oh, actually my food was really good. Like I ate really well. I prepped meals. I took them with me to night shifts. I was like, right, so actually you ate almost perfectly for 5 days, and you had one treat from the bakery as maybe a nice treat, which is also perfectly fine to do. So actually I'd say you did pretty bloody well. And actually it's, if anything, the opposite of being a failure. So it's kind of, you're being consistently good. You've been consistently good all week. I wouldn't worry too much about that one donut. I'd worry more about what you're doing the 99% the rest of the time, which you're doing really well at. So consistency is definitely the name of the game for this. Okay. So one thing I always like to ask as well is, what's maybe like one habit or ritual or thing you do that helps you sort of stay grounded when life/work gets chaotic?
And
it might just be the exercise, is that, but it's good to
I think it might be, but then I can't claim that always helps me to keep grounded, because if I'm being really honest, sometimes that just adds to the stress. And God, when am I going to get this done, or when am I going to get that done? There is one thing that I do every morning, and it comes back to being a child, and that's I make a hot chocolate, and I get back into bed, and for kind of that 5-10 minutes, I don't do anything, but I drink my hot chocolate, and sometimes I read a bit of my book. Like, I'm not scrolling on my phone. I just sit with like a nice warm drink in my still warm bed. And that's something that I've done every day for quite a long time, very consistently, without really thinking about it. And that is something that never causes me stress. And it's 5-10 minutes of nothing. And actually doing nothing is something that probably a lot of people listening to this really struggle with.
100%.
But that's kind of a little bit of nothing that seems to be acceptable to me. And probably that. Because I think everything else that I do, I can't really claim that keeps me grounded. I mean, actually, sometimes I'm doing it a bit like a headless chicken, running around or swimming or biking around. And
no, I love that. I think that 10 minutes of stillness where nothing else is, you're not busy, you're not sort of distracted or busy necessarily by anything else. It's just like that 10 minutes where it's just you time. That's like free space is brilliant. I think, as you say, lots of people really struggle with that. Sometimes I think I did a post a while ago of how a lot of people on their days off will really struggle to actually rest or recover because they spend a lot of time. They might see as default that they'll just sit in front of the TV and they'll put on, I don't know, Netflix or something. They're kind of half watching, they're half on their phone, kind of scrolling through both, and also maybe feeling like they should be doing something more productive, and that itself is stressing them out. They get kind of caught in that cycle of like, actually, this isn't really very restful for me. It might be physically, but actually mentally, it's anything making me almost more stressed and not really relaxing. It's trying to find what is that thing you can do that gives you 10, 15 minutes, an hour of just free mental space. And for you, it's that daily hot chocolate. For me, it's probably walking the dog does it for me, or going surfing. Those two things do it pretty well. It's just kind of finding what's your thing that does that, rather than just defaulting to TV and phone at the same time. Is actually for a lot of people that just doesn't really do the job. So I love it. I think that's a great one. I
do think sometimes like a 5 a.m. wake up, because I'm training at 5:30 or 6 o'clock. I don't think I'm actually capable of doing anything else rather than kind of staring into space and doing nothing. So, which definitely
but that's fine.
But it's kind of rogue, getting back into bed at 5 with a hot drink and maybe a biscuit and just staring into nothingness for a bit. But that helps with the wake up, I think.
Yeah, whatever helps. I think some people would not survive that. They would just end up falling asleep again. So that's a good choice. Alrighty. Well, I'll round us off there. And I think there's lots more we can talk about. So I think we'll definitely need to have a second episode in future for sure. So thank you a million times for coming on. It's been great to have you. And there's so much more we can dive into. But what I was interested in is where can people find you online or follow along with what you're doing?
So I'm mainly just on Instagram, being super honest. On Instagram, I'm at The Hungry Medic. Should just be me on there. I don't think anyone else has that handle at the moment. And I try and post somewhat consistently, but I do drop off the face of the earth sometimes when the scale tips and the balance goes the other way. But that's me.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, I think that's real and that's human, and that's one of the reasons I'm really glad you came on and said that. It's like the actual honesty that sometimes the balance just tips, and that's life. I think we can all see a lot of influencers on there who maybe don't make it necessarily clear that is the reality for a lot of them. And I think a lot of people, I'd say the 99% do actually struggle to have balance. And it's a reminder that Instagram, and it is not always the reality for many people, which I think you really show really well on your profile and your content, the actual reality and the honest truth, which I think is awesome. So keep doing what you're doing.
A lot of people that do post it as well. I think that sometimes that there's an element of, if you weren't filming this, would you actually be doing this? Sometimes, and I think that critical thinking is something that's, without being, criticizing, be critical. That critical thinking of, actually considering the media that you're consuming and thinking like, is this realistic, and would I actually want this? Is a thing that is somewhat lost.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I frequently see things where I'm watching and thinking, oh, this is a disaster waiting to happen, or that I can see that people are watching this and they may try and emulate what they're seeing, and that also will be a disaster waiting to happen. And just thinking, oh, social media. But that's the pros and cons all in one. Amazing. Well, on that slightly depressing note, I'll let you go. And thank you again for coming on. Looking forward to another episode in future. And good luck for your 70.3 as well in September. I'm sure we'll see more updates on social media, and we can go from there.
Cheers. Thank you very much.